Lucius Annaeus Seneca, most commonly known as just Seneca, is recognized as one of the primary forefathers of Stoic philosophy. Stoicism is a school of thought that formed initially in Athens, Greece in 3rd century BC by an individual named Zeno of Citium. And despite the years of fluctuating historic and cultural circumstances that Stoicism has endured since, it retains a uniquely high level of popularity still to this day, testifying for its potency and potential value. To provide some brief, basic background, after being founded in ancient Greece, Stoicism was further formed and popularized in ancient Rome and is most commonly associated with individuals of this time, like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and of course, Seneca. The key principles of the philosophy generally include living in accordance with nature, devoting oneself to wisdom, virtue, and duty, avoiding acting on intense emotion, embracing one's fate, and focusing more on the internal experience of life as opposed to the external. In terms of Seneca specifically, he was born around 4 BC in Spain, but lived most of his life in Rome until he died there in 65 AD. Throughout his life, he was a statesman, orator, tragic writer, philosopher, as well as a variety of other things. Seneca lived a life of rather extreme ups and downs as a result of his particular relationship with various aspects of the politics of Rome at the time. In a lot of ways, he can be observed to have struggled to follow what would be considered his own Stoic advice, which is perhaps worth noting. However, arguably, it does not devalue many of the ideas he shared, but rather, perhaps attest to the difficulty of them. As aforementioned, a leading Stoic principle is that we lack a great deal of control over the outcomes and happenings of our external world, and we can only really ultimately choose, if anything, how we choose to perceive the unfolding of it, how we frame our experience of the fate of everything, and the immovable qualities of our condition. One particular condition that we are thrown and subjected into that Seneca focused much of his discourse on is time. More specifically, how to handle our slippery and transient experience of it. Seneca observed that we tend to be frugal and prudent with many aspects of our life. We tend to hoard our money and possessions and whatever else we can see and get our hands on. And yet, when it comes to time, we rarely guard it or evaluate carefully how well we save and spend it. He suggested that we often give up a great deal of our time to things and people that we wouldn't consider to be worthy of giving anything to if we slowed down and thought about what we were doing and why. Men are thrifty in guarding their private property, but as soon as it comes to wasting time, they are most extravagant with the one commodity for which it's respectable to be greedy, wrote Seneca in his essay and letter entitled On the Shortness of Life. Time in Seneca's mind is to be viewed like any other commodity of life, and if anything, to be viewed as the most valuable one. Ultimately, all we have is our minds and our time, and no one ever knows how much time they have inside their mind. And once it's gone, you can't work for, buy, or fight for it back. This is fairly obvious and even cliche to utter as a sentiment at this point. But despite its obviousness, Seneca observed then, and it can certainly still be observed now, that most of us remain incapable of living as if. We seem to continue to treat our time like it's more or less infinite and more or less inferior to the other objects of our possessions. Unlike the majority of possessions in life, you can't see, hold, or truly know time, making it incomprehensibly slippery and abstract. And because the present is so brief and immaterial, Seneca thought, is why we mostly struggle to properly perceive and value it. For Seneca, to confront the concept of time, one must first fully confront the conditions of their relationship with its finitude and accept their fate as an observer or sort of passenger to it. That you are slipping in every moment towards the end of all moments, and at any moment, it could all be cut short, and you can't do anything about it. This, although bleak, is perhaps worth often considering because the likely fact is that if everyone who is going to lose their life in the next couple years knew they would, mostly all of those people would live differently. And thus, we must live not as if we are one of the ones who will live into late age, but rather one of the ones who might not. Because only in such case can the finitude of life begin to reveal itself, and only when the finitude of life reveals itself can we live in a way that might resemble how a finite life should be lived. Of course, the challenge of this is no small feat. The difference between imagining life might end next week or in a couple years is vastly different than knowing it in fact will. And to know and manage this balance between now and later is perhaps one of the greatest human complications. But Seneca, like many other great philosophers and philosophies, believed that we can and must work to overcome our tendency to look towards the future for solace, and rather, better focus our perspective on the present, not only because the future might not come, But even if it does, when it arrives, it'll likely just be another moment to spend preparing and longing for further future moments, if we remain stuck in such a constant preparatory cycle. It is inevitable, wrote Seneca, that life will be not just very short, but very miserable for those who acquire by great toil what they must keep by greater toil. They achieve what they want laboriously, they possess what they have achieved anxiously, and meanwhile, they take no account of time that will never more return. New preoccupations take the place of the old, hope excites more hope, and ambition more ambition. They do not look for an end to their misery, but simply change the reason for it. For Seneca, to hope to live for oneself finally in the future is to wait until it's properly too late. Rather, to make the most of time is to make the most of today. Lay hold of today's task and you will not need to depend so much upon tomorrow's, he wrote. Seneca believed that one should spend their time fulfilling their duties and responsibilities, enjoying any wealth or fortunes that might come of them, but not working for the purpose of social status or material success beyond one's minimal needs. Because beyond mostly everything else, he argued for allocating as much time as possible to leisure. More specifically, a particular type of well-focused leisure in which one finds tranquility, introspection, and stillness in themselves. Because to be busily engaged in doing nothing is not valuable productivity, and to spend one's free time doing things that are of no real personal value is not well-used leisure. Both are but clever ways of wasting time. The truly leisured person, Seneca wrote, is one who is also conscious of his own leisure. The most valuable use of leisure in his mind is philosophy. Time spent on intellectual reflections in which one recognizes, feels, and observes deeply the life that is being sifted through each moment. It seems that, in this, the worthiest use of time is in some sense spending it on itself. By considering or at least pondering time and how to best use it, one is paradoxically using it well. Seneca described the value of this sort of reflection like that of securing the fluidity of time at the bottom of a glass, so to contain it properly in order to see and possess it. The study of life and time helps us, in his mind, widen or deepen the experience of the very life and time we are studying, allowing us to fill ourselves with the wisdoms, wonders, and connection points to the long gone or distant minds of people that we need as our closest friends, but otherwise could never know or meet. When referring to the study of intellectual matters, Seneca wrote, "You really ought to leave ground level and turn your mind's eye to these studies. In this mode of life, much that is worth studying awaits you. The love and practice of the virtues, forgetfulness of the passions, knowledge of how to live and die, and deep repose." Seneca believed wisdom to be timeless and thus the primary thing worth pursuing and investing in. And considering his words are some 2,000 years old and are still thought to have value, his argument here does appear to hold some validity. How much validity and how much time they can hold, time will tell. In truth, it's fair to argue that no matter who you are and what philosophy you share or follow, no one truly knows how to fully wrestle with the concept of time and when. And whether or not the use of one's time is best served to philosophical studies and contemplations is perhaps true, or perhaps not, and perhaps who's to say. Perhaps to know how anyone can or should spend their time is some amount conceded, and to know why anyone should do anything instead of nothing, or nothing instead of anything, isn't self-evident. It perhaps, like most things, comes down to the individual level, what one deems valuable for themselves, and more importantly, how well they act on what they deem valuable for themselves. Wasted time or well-spent time is all the same when viewed from a sufficient distance outside of it, and it is only to those in it, during it, that can examine, consider, and determine the best way they wish to balance and claim it. And all anyone can ever do is try their best. There is clear value in now, and thus there is clear value in the nows yet to come. Value that we must consider when treating the now we are in, but not so much so that there is none left in either, which appears to leave us with some level of cognitive dissonance when dealing with time. The balancing act of now and later is perhaps nearly an impossible feat, but perhaps it is only in the examination of time that we get to consider such a problem, and it is perhaps only in the consideration of such a problem that we can feel the wonder that is the blender of human consciousness, a sense of confusion wrapped in intrigue, curiosity, and desire to resolve, which is, in proper full-circle fashion, what Seneca believed to be the best use of time. Ultimately, Seneca and his Stoic affiliates help serve as a bridge into this realm of thought and wisdom, to help illuminate time's form so we can better see it as we see any other object, commodity, or feature of existence, to create the internal fortitude to fight the external indifference of the universe, and the internal solace to be okay when we lose. This video was sponsored by Blinkist. If you aren't familiar, Blinkist is a book summary service that condenses complete books down to around 15-minute summaries, making it easy to understand the overviews and essential takeaways in an efficient amount of time. Covering thousands of nonfiction books in an array of subjects like philosophy, science, psychology, health, and much more, Blinkist has a diverse range of titles for just about anyone. If you're interested in philosophy, and Stoicism specifically, Blinkist has great titles including Letters from a Stoic by Seneca, Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, as well as others. With comprehensive overviews, Blinkist not only makes it easy to understand the main ideas of books, but perhaps most valuably, it can help you more efficiently select new books and authors by helping you better and more quickly determine whether or not you are interested, without necessarily having to read the full versions first to find out. For obvious reasons, this could be very helpful for more effective reading and learning habits, especially with the value of time being so high. The first 100 people to use the link in the description will receive 1 free week of unlimited access, as well as 25% off a full membership. The free 7-day trial could be canceled at any time within the trial period. Again, if you're interested, please visit Blinkist.com/pursuitofwonder or click the link in the description. Thanks so much for watching in general, and see you next video.